and just enjoying the last of the season because you know how we are here in Michigan. Gone today, here today, and gone tomorrow. Well, I'm so excited that you guys have tuned in with us on today. I thank all of you all that have sent out messages of concern, that have texted, that have called, that have done all of those things in response to my younger brother on last week. I could not be with you here live in the studio as I often desire to be because I was off taking care of family emergencies. But I'm here today and I'm so glad. I'm going to give you guys, those of you who are tuning in on social media, make sure that you get in here. I'm the guy with the mask on today with the KISS 107.1 sign in the background. So I want to say, you guys get in here. I want to have a real conversation on today. Today, we need to talk about something that's very important. I want to ask the question, who's leading the village? Where are our leaders? And we're going to talk about that today. Who's leading the village? Where are our leaders? And so I want you guys to tune in, chime in, get into this conversation on today. I got my man in the studio with me on today, my show producer, the Rob Father.
Hey, everybody.
All right, Rob is giving you a shout out. So just letting you know that we're in the house on today and we want to have this conversation. So make sure that you get tuned in and you bring the village in. Come on, do a share, like this, do a watch party. Make sure you tag some people so that we can get into this conversation on today, because I got one that I want to talk with you on today. We're going to be talking about, once again, who's leading the village? Where are our leaders? Okay, you know how we do it here at Straight Talk. We give it to you straight, no chaser, no filter. And we're going to get into what's on my mind. I want to, first of all, by saying congratulations to all of those primary leaders or winners. Mr. Amos O'Neill, my choice for state representative for the 95th district. For all of those who are out there, Damon Tibbs, 94th district, Vanessa Guerra, all of those who are out there. Gerald Little, I know that you were one of the commissioners. Congratulations to you all. We want to thank you all for doing what you're doing in the area of civics. So we thank you for that. But what's on my mind today is I want to get into the conversation. We got a full hour today. I don't have to worry about any commercials. It's going to be just straight conversation with you guys that are out there today.
Unless you want a commercial.
Unless I want a commercial, all right.
You start tripping on your own words there, Kareem. I'm going to take a break for you.
Oh, man, come on. We know how. Come on. Y'all know we got this, right? We're glad to be back in the studio. And I want to start off by talking about what's on my mind. Oh, my goodness. COVID-19. There is a great milestone, unfortunately, that we have passed this weekend. Over 5 million cases that we have here in the United States, and nearly 163,000 deaths is where we are now trending. The nation has been doing very well. We did initial lockdown. Some states decided that they didn't want to participate and play fair. Now there are many states that are dealing with issues of cases going up. Michigan's numbers have also begun to rise as well, as our governor, Big Gretch, has begun to put some additional stipulations in place. Now, the crazy thing about this is that with cases going up, trending upward, we are now forced to begin to ask ourselves, what are we going to do as it relates to sending our kids back to school? Those of you who are out there listening, I want to know, where are you? Are you going to send your kids back to school this fall? Are you doing virtual learning? I don't know what the plan is for the school districts. So that becomes a very real concern. Everyone is acting as though it doesn't exist, though. On this weekend through, I think, this coming weekend, we have 250,000 to be expected bikers ascending on South Dakota. And that is absolutely bananas. This is the largest gathering of people that we have had since the beginning of this pandemic. And there are a lot of fears and concerns of what could take place. I saw one biker, I was watching a news program and they interviewed him and he said, what are you doing here if you don't have a disease? Everyone here should have some kind of, and I thought it was the craziest thing in the world. But what was crazy, even worse, was that there were 60% of the residents that were in that particular area, that town, that were actually against this happening. And they said, that they were going to take this. The city council passed it because I think that they said they bring in about $800 million in revenue in this 2-week period. So we're going to be praying for what's happened. Those that are in South Dakota, hopefully they're wrong and there won't be a tremendous spread But our nation, these people are going to leave there. They're going to come back to your community and our community. So we want to make sure that we're praying seriously for that, because the last thing we need is our cases to continually go up as we're trying to send kids back to school. All right, the next thing I want to talk about, Lebanon. Oh my gosh. I believe in Saginaw Township is starting off. I did see a comment out there. I'll get to your comments in just a second. I did see in Saginaw Township starting off with virtual learning for the first month. Thank you, Content Director Yvonne Daniels. So we're starting in Saginaw Township with virtual learning. But I want to get the next thing I wanted to talk about is what is happening in Beirut, Lebanon. This is absolutely horrific. You want to talk about protests? There are tens of thousands of people, literally, that are protesting in Beirut, which is the capital city of Lebanon, after the blast that took place on last week. I think it was August the 4th in the afternoon in the capital city, right at the port. 158 people dead, thousands of individuals injured, and I think they said a couple hundred individuals are yet missing. So that death toll is more than likely going to continue to climb. But this was the number that caught my attention, Rob. 300,000 people were made homeless immediately. I can't imagine a situation here where 300,000 people are made homeless immediately, also in the midst of dealing with a pandemic and dealing with financial issues over in Lebanon as well. So we're going to be praying for Lebanon, Beirut, Lebanon, because that is a horrific situation that they are dealing with over there. And so we want to make sure that we are really doing our part as a community. I know there's been a number of things. that have been going and causes that have been raising funds for that particular thing. So they're protesting. The reason that they're protesting over there, though, and I need you to know this, what they've been doing, they've been taking over government buildings. Rob, they've been taking these buildings over, and each day they've been trying to take over additional government buildings because they said that they have been concerned about this for 6 years, that these explosives were being housed in these empty buildings for over 6 years, and they've been
fertilizer been housed, but it's not been properly stored.
Absolutely,
they let them sit there, and so the people didn't process, put them separately. Supposed to the same material that was used to bring down the Oklahoma bombing.
Absolutely,
24 years ago.
Absolutely, and so it's absolutely horrific what's going on. So they're like, hey, we're not protesting for just changes in policies and procedures. We want the whole government out. All of those leaders that are a part of this, we want them to kick rocks, get out of here. We want them gone. And so we will take a look, and I'm sure that many protests in America will be taking a look at how they are going to fare and what is going to be necessary for them to begin to actualize some serious change in their country. All right, so next, the confuser in chief. We know we're talking about number 45. He signed a series of executive orders, and I think that it is my responsibility to make sure, as well as other individuals, to make sure that we get a clear understanding of what is going on. All right. So social media, I want you guys to get engaged. We're going to be talking about leadership. We're our village leaders, but the confuser in chief, he signed a number of executive orders. And I want to talk about exactly what those orders mean to each of you that are out there. The UIA, the Unemployment Insurance Agency, had been doing $600 additional. It's called COVID hazard pay, in addition to the $300 or so that they were doing each week for those who have been affected by COVID. So now what we are seeing is that there are a number of people who are now, he comes along with the pen. And what's interesting about this, Rob, this is what's interesting to me about this whole thing about signing all of these executive orders. I don't know if you remember, there was another president that was in office before this one. Mm-hmm. And number 45 was giving him the blues, saying that he could not lead and he was a defunct leader because he had to make all of his changes. He couldn't negotiate. He couldn't bring home the deal, sign the deal, because he had to do everything by signing an executive order.
Which we know is not true.
Absolutely. We know that's not the case. But what we have learned is that there are a number of individuals who are now bringing that to light. Like, he signed more executive orders than any other president this time in his office.
Well, he started off day one, and the whole agenda was to undo everything that the previous president had done through executive order.
Come on, is the hate that real?
The hate is that real. I mean, it was before that, and anything that was not already legal or lawful the president undid. But I think he was in concert with the Republican Congress. It's just my opinion about the matter. You know?
And so we know what's going on. Y'all really know what it is. Y'all know the real deal, what's going on. But this guy, so anyways, he passed this. He signed this executive order, and he said because Congress was unable to act and come to a consensus. We know the deadline was this past Friday. That he was going to sign this order. The order now says that he wants to give them. When I say them, those who are unemployed, an additional $400. But here is the kicker, and I need y'all to understand this real quick. The first problem with this whole thing is that the Constitution tells us that Congress has the right to appropriate funds.
Right.
So not only is this an overreach, once again, of his roles and responsibilities as president, but does he even have the power to do what he's trying to do? What are you going to say, Rob?
Dante Toussaint and I talked about this on the phone just briefly, and I said, that money's coming from somewhere. The money now, Congress appropriates the funds to various departments and programs. The president can do whatever he wants with that legally, in many cases, with some exceptions. And so, when you think about where that money's coming from, it's coming from Social Security, perhaps. It's coming from some other department that's going to be robbed, so to speak, of their funds for some reason. Not to mention the fact that also in that executive order, he says he's giving a tax break to all the people who are employed, but you can't give a tax break to people who are not employed. So there's something wrong with that whole scenario right there. I predict at some point now, I don't know how executive orders get challenged in court, but I don't think this is going to go very far. However, if you do take this $600, or whatever it is, and go with it, and it's not taxed,
well, this
face next year for this order.
This is what's interesting because they had one of his financial people on trying to explain it. It was such a confusing mess. But the reality of the situation is, he is pledging $300. He's saying the federal government will give 300, 25%.
Do the rest, but the state doesn't do the rest.
Hold on, that's what I'm saying. So
Right.
25% is supposed to come from the state that is making this $400 additional amount. But the problem is this: the very states that he is saying should be paying 25% of these unemployment benefits are asking themselves from the federal government to keep our first responders active and to keep those things that are necessary. Right. And so he is making plain politics with individuals' lives, and I hate to see this happening. We see it happening with the coronavirus. It's almost a separation that is, the older people understand that it's real because they're dying and they've been hospitalized. The younger people think that it's not real, and then there's another line that you can see: those individuals who believe and are backers of Trump believe that this is all just going to disappear. This is a fallacy. It's in our mind. Those who are usually opposed to his philosophy are believing that it's real and are looking at the science and looking at the numbers continually go up. But I got to talk to America today. We've got to have a conversation because this is a failure of leadership. And as we begin to look at how things are happening here on today, just with these executive orders, and I'm not even done yet, because these things are very misleading. We need to know who is leading the village. Where are our leaders? So that was the unemployment situation. So that is going to fall dead pretty much. They'll be back at it. I was listening to Congresswoman Maxine Waters, and she has a really interesting bill that she is posing as it relates to those African Americans who are part of the Choctaw Nation. That means the Indians, the Native Americans that were here. Right. And so she's pushing some, and I want to talk about that next. I want to get more information, but what I saw was really interesting. She's saying, they have that benefit of what's going on with the reservation land and the casino money. And she says it's time for us to be able to bring some equity in those areas as well. So eviction orders. So when we initially started this whole thing with COVID-19, there was a moratorium on evictions. This is not that. Please pay your rent. Don't think that you're going to get some money and the rent is not going to be held against you. As a matter of fact, there is still a moratorium on evictions. Not a moratorium on evictions. The first one was a moratorium. This one is really a note to play nice. It is, hey, if you're a lender, if you don't have to evict, could you really consider not evicting? This is not a moratorium.
And it's state by state because each state has different rules, So if the governor, let's say, if the governor Rick Mertz say, there's a moratorium here for these people here, then yes. But if you are wise, check with your landlord.
And then the other issue that is important, and we've got to begin to make sure that we're making some wise decisions.
Right.
Just because there was a moratorium and there may possibly be an additional moratorium, it does not mean that you are no longer responsible for the rent once the
Florida
situation
mortgage.
has passed. You understand what I'm saying? So that means that you need to be doing is everything that you can to pay your rent, pay whatever bills that you have, because they're not wiping these debts clean.
No.
They're not wiping them clean. They are just pushing them off. So that means that you will probably, at the ending of this thing, not only have to pay the bill that you had, but probably I know a number of places have stopped the interest or any
Right.
occurring fees.
Or they're extending the lease or your mortgage to the end of it. So you got a 30-year
Absolutely.
mortgage, you know. So
it's called wrapping it around toward the end.
Exactly.
So let's make sure.
Same with card notes too.
Absolutely. Say all of those things. So let's make sure we do what we can to stay on top of things, and let's not create situations. We are already dealing with an astronomical wealth gap as it relates to African American communities in relation to white America. Let's not continually put ourselves in a poverty situation where we are continually having to rob Peter to pay Paul. So let's do our best to come together and make some things happen. The next order. Absolutely, go ahead.
I think that I would hate for people to think that or hope that we're going to wait not to pay anything until we go into a depression. Because people, my foster mother lived through a depression, and she told me all about. She said black people were able to get through the depression more than white people were. But if we wait at this time,
because we used to not having nothing,
yeah, more or less. But if you're waiting for this, recession is one thing, but depression is a totally different thing.
Absolutely.
And this country in today's age cannot afford a depression at this point.
And based on where we are, and I'm looking at the national debt and other things that are going on, we're in a tough situation. But let's get to this. So the payroll tax. Let me let you guys know what's going on here with this. And I'm glad, Rosa Williams, that you're enjoying this information. Let's continually get this information out. The payroll tax basically says all of those things, those taxes that come out from the federal government that would go towards Social Security and associated fees, healthcare, those things. They're going to push those back, and they won't be paying those things for a period of time. Now, I need you to understand the danger and why I think that this is dead in the water. There are many Republicans that don't agree with this process, because what in essence you're doing is we need to understand that those who are working today are actually paying the Social Security benefits for those who have worked their years, 30, 20, 30, 40 years or whatever, and now are in retirement. So in a situation when we already have an unlimited, ridiculous amount of national debt, we now are talking about toying around with these payroll taxes, which means that there will be a period of time, even if it's for a period, it's such a fragile balance that a period of 4 to 6 months has the ability to bankrupt what we're doing as it relates to the Social Security. So I don't think that that's going to happen. And if so, that means that that also means that the corporations would have to sign off on that. And I think that that's going to be a problem, because I don't think that we're going to find enough Republicans that are willing to have that conversation and vote for that. As a matter of fact,
not to mention, because the Social Security not only helps elderly people or me who may have to collect that,
but disabled individuals,
but disabled people,
absolutely,
they rely on that check every month.
And so we got to make sure that we're listening to what is going on. These things impact the village every single step. Now, the last thing is probably the most straightforward thing of all of them. That is a student deferment loan. Student loans deferment, and that is a straight deferment. He's pushing it back, I think, down to the end of the year. You don't have to pay those student loans. But during the same time, now listen to this, those of you who have student loans, during the same period of time, that means that interest is also not occurring on your student loans. So if there was ever a time that you were going to pay down lump sums of money on your loan, if you have it, this would be the great time, because you're not accruing interest. So anything that you pay on your student loan at this moment is going to go directly toward the principal balance of what you're dealing with. So it's important to realize that this can be used as a tool of empowerment if we look at it that way. All right. So there we are, the confuser in chief. Hopefully I've helped to clarify some things that we have been looking at, some things that we've been dealing with. And now I got to turn the corner and I got to deal with I want to talk about the ghost of George Floyd. I can't breathe. Many of you have sat and have seen and have participated, and hearts have been wrenched with seeing what took place with George Floyd. George Floyd, we understand, in Minneapolis, he was pulled out of the car due to counterfeit $20 bill. He lost his life. The officer had his knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 45 seconds, which led to the demise of that young man. And I want to talk about the ghost of George Floyd. So this is a group here in the Saginaw community, and many of you have been asking what exactly was the issue, what was going on. Rob, as a matter of fact, I was here completing a show when someone sent me the live feed of the video of the young man being tased 4 times right here in the city of Saginaw. We're talking about what's happening right here in Saginaw, not in Minneapolis, not in New York City,
right in our backyard,
but what's happening in our backyard now. And the reason that it's important for us to talk about this is because our police chief, Chief Ruth, told us that these types of incidents don't happen in our community. And so I'm going to be talking about 2 incidents here that I think that the community has to wake up. Where are our leaders? Because I want to talk about Jennifer Clemons in just a moment as well. Jennifer Clemons is that young Black woman that was handcuffed and got hit multiple times by a white police officer while handcuffed. So we're going to talk about these issues. George Floyd, the ghost of George Floyd. There's a young man, and I know this young man. I had an opportunity to sit and talk with him before any of this was going on. Cornelius Phelps, he goes, I call him Neil. He was tased 4 times. Those of you who are saying, you know, why didn't he just surrender? Why didn't he just surrender? Now, this particular group, the ghost of George Floyd, and you know, there are people, there are politicians and leaders in our community, and you know, the past understanding of how this should be is that, you know, we have always been taught, you know, to comply, to comply, to comply. Right. Well, if things are ever going to change, there has to be a changing of our mentality as well. And I think, and people are not going to like what I'm about to say, but this is straight talk. I'm going to give it to you straight. We got groups like ALPAC that are out there, that are community-based groups that are walking hand in hand, singing Kumbaya with police officers. I'm not sure how effective they're going to be, because I honestly believe there has to be a very, what's the term that I want to say? There has to be a tension that exists for change to take place. I believe in police office,
well, necessary, because if there's no tension, everything is calm.
Absolutely. So we
that's what John Lewis is talking about, necessary trouble.
John Lewis is saying it's time to have some necessary trouble. Absolutely. And that's what that young lady was saying that took the picture and got suspended. But I need to say this, and I'm not bashing ALPAC. I think that, you know, people are going to do things, and we do these things to try to see what's going to work. But in this particular situation, I think there has to be a little bit more tension between police officers and those groups that are going to be responsible for making sure that officers and policing and community officers are doing their job. And unfortunately, I've seen this, and I've been listening to what's going on. There's been a lot of conversation, and what tends to happen in these situations is that once you're in this board and once you're in this situation, and I pray that this is different. Please, I pray that this is different. And as a matter of fact, my conversation is today to challenge you all to not get pacified into thinking that now that I'm on the board and now that I'm working with the police officers and now the chief and the sheriff and these individuals know my name, that I can, you know, we got to be careful on how we engage, or we might lose our seat at the table.
You might get comfortable.
Village leaders, please hear me. Wake up. I need us to realize something that is very real on today. It's not about being accepted at the table. As a matter of fact, there is something that continually goes on, and me and some of my brothers have been having this conversation. They will bring one of us into, you know, to the back room, and we'll be allowed at the table. And I've been in this position so many times. And they will, you know, want us to be the voice for Black America, and they will want us to be the ones to go out and to communicate. But we are now at a time and a place that it's time out for these secret meetings. It's time out for the doors. And Joe, I'm coming back to the ghost of George Floyd. It's time out for allowing some people into the room and not other people. Equity means that we all have a right to be at the table. Why are we getting excited to be invited to a room or invited to a table or to sit on a board when it is not a privilege, but it is your right as a citizen of the community to be able to have conversation and to ask and to know what's going on in your community? So I want you all to really pay attention to what's going on. And not that I have it out for ALPAC, but I don't ever think that anything, you know, power never wants to relinquish itself. When you listen to what Frederick Douglass said, so you can't expect power to say, you know what, I'm going to release my power. So there has to be a tense strain between any community organization and the organization that has the power in order for effective change to really take place, Rob.
Anything, anybody or anything with power wants more power. That's why it never relinquishes it. That's supposed to be the beauty of our democracy in America. The fact that one president can release that much power to another person. Okay, that's the whole. The experiment works in that sense. Now we're concerned about this year, of course, but it was supposed to work that in that sense. That's the only time power really gives itself up.
Because power is intoxicating.
Exactly.
And so that's why a president only has certain period of time. There are term limits.
Right.
Our congressmen have a certain period of time that they're in office. And now what I want to say, and Amos O'Neill, I am a proponent for him. I'm praying and voting for him because I see the community work that he has done. So all of those leaders who are now being elected, this is our primary season. As you get elected, you have a responsibility for the process to begin for your transition of power. We can no longer allow our leaders to stay in position until they croak over and die, and then we're looking for who's going to be the next leader, okay? So let's get back to George Floyd.
We can't leave a vacuum in that system.
Absolutely. So let's get back to the situation with the ghost of George Floyd. So Cornelius Phelps, a.k.a. Neil, he was there, and the ghost of George Floyd has been keeping the spirit of George Floyd, the protest, the marches alive, and everything that they have been doing has been extremely peaceful. We've seen them on the news, all of the results of their work, and I think that it's necessary for this group to continue on. And there was, a situation, and so this is where the two stories collide. For those of you who are listening, I hope you are really paying attention to what's going on, because it's going to be mandatory for each of you to begin to get involved with this process and take action. All right. On July the 27th, Cornelius Phelps, he was tased. There was a young woman that we're going to talk about, Jennifer Clemens. On July 11th, Jennifer Clemens, there's a videotape of her while she was being handcuffed, hands behind her back. Her and a white officer got into it. She spit on the officer. The officer is seen on videotape punching Miss Clemens, like knocked her to the ground, not in the chest, punched her like she was a dude, knocked her to the ground, punched her a couple of times. Then, based upon the information that I've heard, and this is now hearsay because I haven't seen this part, but talking with individuals who have seen these videotapes, is seen walking around angry, like ready to do more damage. And the story is that these tapes will not be, they're being held up by our prosecutor, who is the chief or the highest law enforcement officer in the county of Saginaw, John McCogan. I consider you friend, but John, I don't understand why we are holding off on allowing these videotapes to be seen. But the question or the statement is that the reason these videotapes are not being released is because this is an ongoing investigation. Phooey! Shame on you, and shame on our community. Absolutely. Petty Lewis out there saying it's time for us to stop trying to get to the table. Let's just burn the table. I want to build a new table. Absolutely. But when we look at this and we go through this story, he says that he won't release the tapes, Rob, because this is an ongoing active case. But we are seeing situations all over the country that there are active, the George Floyd case, it's an active investigation.
And in a lot of cases, still like George Floyd, still happening all over the place.
Absolutely. I mean, there's situations that are occurring and they're releasing the video, release the body cam, because I heard that was the most damaging. And I understand that this is problematic. And somebody said, we are wrestling, and if that video is released, we're looking at a situation where CNN and all these other places may be hovering in Saginaw. But why are we going to be silent now? The whole point was these things don't happen in our community. And this is a blatant situation that was caught on video, and the tape needs to be released. So this is what I'm saying. So the ghost of George Floyd was there because the police officers union, and I love police officers, my family, I have our law enforcement, it's kind of like, I have a white friend, I have a black friend, but it's the same thing. My family it comes from law enforcement, military law enforcement. So I don't get no beef with police officers. I'm not a person who says defund the police. That's not where I'm at. But I do believe that we need to have community officers. I understand that policing, as we know it today, was something that was a part of the peonage system after we were released as slaves, we were then policed and thrown back. So police have had a negative existence in Black communities since their inception. However, we've got to begin to make sure that we hold these individuals accountable. This is why I say there must be more tension between organizations like ALPAC and our police officers. You cannot sit by idle. Where's the outrage? Where is the cry? No, we will not sit back. No, we want the tape released. But if you are in bed with the police officers or seen as being an organization complicit to, you lose the respect of the community that you're leading.
All that tells me is we're going to go along to get along. And I'm not for going along to get along because I need that attention because I need them to know how I feel about certain things. It's okay to be, you like to do a kumbaya moment, and we can come to the agreement. But we have to be able to listen to, here's my problem, here's why I feel the way I do. Don't ask why I'm an angry Black man or angry Black woman or whatever. Okay, you need to understand that, not to say, well, I'm gonna pat you in the back there and make you one of us. No.
Well, this is the thing, Rob. They don't have to ask why we're angry because the reality is they know why we're angry. And those systems have been put in place. So they're not lost on the fact that we're angry, but they want to focus on the fact that we are angry and make it look as though we are people who are just enraged and angry and wild and violent. No, we are fed up. And we are demanding that change take place. So this is not, you're right, there needs to be an opportunity for us to talk. I believe that in order for change to take place, as I say on this show all the time, that all change is going to start with a conversation. Those of you who are out there listening to me in social media land, I want you to begin to give me your feedback on this. What is it that we need to begin to do? What are the things that are happening that we need to see? And how is change going to happen? So Cornelius Phelps, he's going to be on our show next week, Rob. I'm going to bring him in. And so what happened was they were there, and they weren't even protesting. They were demonstrating. The police officers, they went over to the place where the police officers hang out and where they meet and do all of those other things. And they made sure that they were on public property, right, so that they weren't, invading or doing anything inaccurately or wrong. One police officer saw them there. People know who they are because they've been doing protests and demonstrations all over the city. So they're not lost in terms of who these individuals are. And so these police officers in the police union was upset that this officer lost his job. Now, this is what's crazy. They think that it's okay. And Chief Ruth, I want to give you kudos. I know you get a lot of negative press, but I want to give you kudos for implementing and responding based upon the changes in your policy that you said that you would do. There would be a non-tolerance of certain types of things, and your response to what you did with the officer that hit Jennifer Clemens was 100% spot on. I applaud you and I say kudos to you. There was a change in policy, and that policy was enacted immediately, effective immediately, and the young man was fired. So the police association wants to get his job back. That's what they do, the union. They want to come back in, get him his job back, make him whole because he should have never been fired. This person spat on him. You are an officer of the law, seen as antagonistic in so many ways. And we've seen how the conversation has been. Whether she was right or wrong, I don't agree with that at all. I don't think anybody deserves to be spat on, but she was spat on. So they were standing there because they knew that the union was getting together because they were upset about the fact that they wanted this officer back. So the fact that the ghost of George Floyd was even present, showing any type of opposition to what they wanted to have happen, was problematic. And we understand that a lot of times now, officers think that they are the law. They're not symbols of the law, but they think that I am the law. I told you to do this, you do this now. So the issue now, and many of you are asking, what is the reason? Why did and we saw the video of the young man. Neil is probably, he towers over me, probably a good 6'4".
How old is Neil?
I think he's like 24, something like that. But he towers probably about 6'4". So the officers began to tell him, put your hands behind your back. And his questioning is, and this is what we were looking at. People are saying, well, why, he was asking, can I stand here? Well, am I able to stand here? If I'm on property and I'm in the wrong place, as an officer, I'm asking, where can we stand that we won't be creating a situation? And which I think is a legitimate question to ask. You have a right to protest. The Constitution says that. That overrides anything else that exists. So he begins to ask that question, and you see that in the video. And then as they say, you need to do this, you need to move, you need to move. Okay, now you're under arrest. So people say, people are asking the question, why didn't he just comply? They said, put your arms behind your back, turn around, you're under arrest now. And this becomes the issue right here. So are we at a position now in life that when a police officer goes across, now they didn't violate policy, because based upon policy they did what was necessary. But what was not kosher was, first of all, why were they engaging them, and they had a right to freely protest? You know what I'm saying? What was the reason for the first reason that they were engaging them when they have the right for freedom of assembly, right? So that was my first thought. Why are you engaging them? Because you don't want them to be there. And how you feel does not have any role to play out on how law is enacted. Now, you can follow your policies and procedures, but this is why there is a need for those policies and procedures to change. He asked a simple question. Petty Lewis, public or private property? I think it's public. And I believe it's public. When I looked at it, Petty Lewis, I believe that it was public. I'm not sure if Petty Lewis is your real name, but anyways, Petty, I appreciate that. But I believe that it's public, and I looked at the place, and I think that it's public. So even then, I mean, after asking, well, where can we stand? What is their role? They're community officers, supposedly, to protect and to serve. And in that moment, because they were upset that they were there, because they were supporting their comrade in trying to get his job back, and these people were standing in opposition, what did they do? They then say, no, you've got to move. They don't even answer the question. Well, where am I not on private property? If this is private property, where can I go that is not private property? And the reason I'm telling this story is because no one in our community is telling the whole story. And this is why this young man has to come on to the show, because I sat there and I know this is not an aggressive young man. He's a young man in the climate that we are in that is standing up for rights and is trying to change a system that is so antiquated and that is directly opposed to Black men. All right. Honey Jador, police said it was private. That's why they were asked to move. Okay. Now that you're telling me that this is private property, and I ask you the question, well, where can I go to demonstrate and to exercise my First Amendment right to peacefully assemble and to protest? Then he should have said, you know what, if you stand over there, you're right.
Exactly.
But it goes back to the motive. And the motive is the thing that is wrong. The policy may be okay. They've done everything according to policy, but your engagement strategy is way off and it is wrong. So what happens is they continually tell him to put his arms behind his back. One of the young ladies is saying, you know what? He can't. He has a existing condition that won't allow him to really put his arms back without pain. They didn't listen to this. It became antagonistic. And from what point now this is where we begin to talk about your policy. Now, if you say that tasing someone 4 times, you got a whole litany of officers that are around, and they were being abusive with their words and their language. You would have think that somebody bombed something or shot a gun off. It was not professional. And so our officers have an element of responsibility where disengaging the conflict, where conflict de-escalation has to be a way and a tool that we utilize, that we look at our citizens, especially in this particular situation, because there was no violent or crime that was going to be offensive or harmful to someone's life. They have to begin to engage community, like each and every community citizen has the responsibility and the right to be respected by officers. Law enforcement should be respected. I believe it. The badge has a symbolic association with authority, but as a citizen of this community, I pay your bills. And so there is a level of respect that has to be given both ways in this particular situation.
You know, Don, Kareem, this reminds me of, I was just a kid then, but I watched a lot of the civil rights marches and whatnot and abuses. This takes me back to what happened in Mississippi, Alabama, where police officers just go against blacks to harass them, and then the blacks could do anything peacefully and still get harassed. Well, here we are, 50 years later, we're back to the square one again, doing the same thing.
You have no rights. Can I stand here? No. Can I stand here? No. Well, where can I stand? Nowhere. You got to go. And it goes back not to policy, not to what their mission should be. Right. So even if they follow policy, the mission statement of the policing agency has now been aborted because you're no longer protecting and serving. And so I think that that becomes one of the key things. And a number of you that are on social media are asking the question, was it public privacy or was it private? I have no idea. I think Petty Lewis and Tiffany Harris, that you guys are absolutely right. We need to go and but this is what I'm saying. This is where our leadership should step in. We have a young African-American man in our community who is trying to do things according to the law, who is trying to demonstrate his First Amendment right and do so in accordance with the law, and he is being violated now. So someone says, why didn't you just put your hands behind your back? So I love the fact that that this is occurring because it's making us have a conversation.
This touches me because he's 24 years old. My son is 24 years old. He's black. What if this could be anyone else's 24-year-old son or daughter in that same situation there? This is why it should range outrage, for lack of a better word, other people who are older, the leaders or whatnot, because it could be your child. You know?
Absolutely. And this is what they're saying on social media. Tiffany Harris, thank you for your comment. Latrell Bailey said excessive force incidents by Saginaw police officers have been occurring long before George Floyd's murder. They're now being brought to light because of George Floyd. And that's the thing. George Floyd was not the reason, but he was the tipping point.
That's why he said ghost of.
Absolutely. So that's why he was a ghost of George Floyd. So anyways, this goes on. He's tased not one time, but he's tased 4 times. I didn't even know a taser could go off that many times. But as he was down and he was hurting and he was in pain, he was asking the question, are you afraid of me? Like, why are you hurting me? And are you afraid of me that there are, 12 police officers now? I'm one man on the ground. Are you hurting me because you are afraid of me? And they continued off to allow the officers, let's sit down and talk. And I think that that's a powerful question. Police officers don't think they should be questioned. Absolutely, because they understand it. Thank you, Rebecca Townsend Garth, for your statement. Police officers don't think that they should be questioned. They think that they have the same right that parents have to children. But the difference is you brought that child into the world. So you have a right of what that child eats, what he sleeps, what he wears, because you are responsible for them being here. Police officers, their authority cannot go unquestioned because you are not the law and you are not the ultimate authority. But it's a simple question of decency and how you view and you respect other individuals. And in this particular case, and I don't want to give his whole story, but he was tased 4 times. Now, I'll tell you this, that there was such an outcry just from the videos because what took place is that it was excessive. Now we've moved from, okay, your policy may be intact. You may be responding based upon policy and be in your rightful place. But now, when do we begin to say that this is excessive force? And we moved from whether or not this was right, whether or not he should have put his arms behind his back. Why are they engaging him in the first place, which is the main question? Because this is the thing. All of the crimes that exist and the things that are happening to Black men, especially with moving violations and cars, what was I pulled over in the first place for? So now you have it is a legalized form, and one of the young Brandon Harris, you said this, and I agree with you. It is a legalized form of what Michael Bloomberg was doing in New York. Stop and frisk. If you stop them, there's a probability that you will find something that you can then pin on them for their arrest. And it is not right. It is a total abuse of power. I agree with you, Cheryl Walker. Honey Jador, we're going to take a quick break in just a second here. Honey Jador says, Rebecca Garth Townsend, so true. They already having a chip on their shoulders. A badge to them is what a gun is to a fool. I want you guys to stay tuned to this conversation because we're going to get through this conversation and then we're going to begin to ask. I want you to help me out by continuing this conversation about who's leading the village. Where is the outrage? Where is the village? There was an 84-hour demonstration that the ghost of George Floyd did in front of the police station. It was dismal response, and maybe because everyone didn't know what was going on. But if this was your child, would you want the community to stand up? If this was your child, would it be okay to say, you should have just put your hands behind your back, or you should have just given him your driver's license? No, why are you arresting me? And that particular question is a question that I think every citizen across the United States should have the right to know why. No, give me your license, then I'll tell you why arrested me. That doesn't even make sense. what is my crime, and I will comply with whatever it is, because chances are, if I was speeding, I already knew that before you pulled me over. We're going to have this. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and I want you guys to stick and stay. Don't go away. We'll be back with more Straight Talk.
You're listening to Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen on KISS 107.1.
Hey, this is Steve Harvey. You
How long you need, a minute or 30?
What you missed. Ladies and gentlemen.
How long you need, a minute or 30?
Give me a minute.
Okay.
All right. Donna Shaw, we see you out there. I'm going to get to your question. What did you say about pride? Absolutely. That is such a good point. Tiffany Mystic Harris, always the white cop. Well, in this particular situation, Tiffany, it wasn't the white cops initially. It was these egocentric black cops. And this one particular cop I've seen him really abuse other people verbally and take his job. Sometimes, police officers,
wash your hands.
They've never really, how can I say this? They've never really been anybody that had any type of authority. And, they get a badge and they get an audience, and then suddenly they become the town hall bully. And there's one, and this particular officer, one of them that was in there was an African-American cop.
This message brought
We're going to be right
by
back
the
in just one
National
second.
Association of Broadcasters and this station.
It's Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen on KISS.
Okay, we are back with more of Straight Talk, and we're here. And so those, like I used to always listen to Tom Joyner, and he would always talk about there were two shows, the one that you hear and then the one that you would see online. And he was my idol. Tom, I love you. He did a great job. All right, so we're going to get back to this conversation. And Donna Shaw, you asked me a question. You asked me what was the statement that I said about pride. And in this particular situation, I think that this is where humility and understanding and having the ability to empathize could have gone a long way. And as a matter of fact, there was a young Caucasian woman that was saying, listen, I am trained in negotiation. Let's just talk. They weren't trying to hear it. He got in her face without a mask, started yelling and spitting, I'm a police officer, get out the way. And I just thought it was just absolutely crazy. You would have thought these kids were breaking into a building. But the thing that we said about pride, Donna, was that pride is the only disease, first of all, that a person can suffer from, and everyone know it except for them. But even more important than that, pride cannot hear, see, or think. It loses its ability to hear, see, or think. And so officers must realize that a little humility, will go a very long way. All right, so I want to thank you guys that are out there. Tiffany Battle, I understand that. Thank you. Petty Lewis, wasn't police black, too doggone shame. I'm not going to use the word that you use, but we got to begin to take better care of ourselves and make sure that we're looking out for what's the best. Had a bunch when I was in Washington, and like many years ago. Okay, so many of you guys are commenting. I appreciate those comments, but I want to get to this conversation. So we're going to have Mr. Phelps, Cornelius Phelps. He's going to come in from the Ghost of George Floyd, and we're going to have this conversation because he has spent the last 84 hours on last week. He spent 84 hours sitting outside the police department. I need y'all to hear this. Now, our Ruth is a civil servant. He works for the community. His goal and his desire should always be to mediate and to remove any barriers between conversation and understanding between the community. This young man sat outside the police station, gave an open invitation to Ruth to come out and to sit at the table and talk as they had before. As a matter of fact, one of their conversations that they had before was about, all we want you to do is to remove chokeholds. Any restraints or physical abuse above the shoulders is grounds for immediate termination. Who knows if that played a part as to why Jennifer Clemens was retributed so quickly with that police officer losing his job. So 84 hours, him and other individuals sat outside the police station waiting for the police officer to come and to recognize them and to have a conversation about what took place. And from my understanding, there were some city council individuals that went out there, and I'm sure Jamie Ford was one of those individuals. She's an amazing woman, but there were other individuals that came out and were speaking. And so I want to make sure that you don't lose sight of what is happening in our community, because you have to have a response. And so next week, let's listen to what he's saying. There was an overwhelming response. He went to jail to the hospital first and then jail. And they put up a GoFundMe page to help with his legal actions because we know that once you go to jail, they're probably going to give you a resistant arrest, felonious, all kinds of things. They'll give you 2 or 3 so that you can plead one of those down. But listen to this, y'all. I need you to understand this. From my understanding, as of today, he still has not been charged with the crime.
Really?
Not having a single crime. So I want you all to get involved with this conversation. Okay, you are leadership. Bet you got connections. If you know their names, can I get them so I can file a report when they open up? I certainly will get that information. I'm sure some of them are probably listening or will listen to this conversation today. Petty Lewis, I will definitely inbox me at Straight Talk, or Kareem Bowen, send me a direct message and I'll get you exactly what you need, because the community has to have a response. Now, let's get to what I wanted to ask today. Who is leading the village? And all of these things are happening on our watch. Who are the leaders that are responsible for making change happen? John Quincy Adams said this of a leader. He said that a leader is an individual who inspires others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and to become more. And so that is what a leader is. My understanding is that a leader is someone who can see things that can be improved and who rallies people to move toward that better vision. Where are the individuals that are out there that are mobilizing? A leader is not just about giving an arousing speech. He's not about motivating people. We have motivational speakers for that. But a leader has to be willing to motivate people around a particular cause. Rob,
inspire people.
Well, yes, we're going to inspire you. See, and that's the difference. Motivation is you're speaking to the emotions,
right.
And you've seen those things. Tony Robbins is a great motivator. And I've been in businesses where they say, you can be a diamond, you can be an opal, you can be a platinum. And I get motivated. I'm like, oh, I can do this. And I'm buying thousands of dollars of products. I remember this vitamin thing that someone got me out there, a brother of mine got me into. And it was all about, I was motivated in the moment. I understood what it could do, but I didn't do anything with it.
Motivate means to push.
Absolutely. But inspiring.
Right.
When you are inspired, it speaks to the heart of a man. It speaks to your spirit. And when you become inspired, inspiration almost instantly causes you to act and to respond. Just being motivated isn't enough. We've got to make sure that we are seeing our leaders act, okay? So leaders need. I asked the question on social media, and many of you that are hearing this conversation, you may have seen this post or not. But I ask, what is it that makes an individual a leader? What are the qualities that we need as a leader, that we need our leaders to have? And many of you said the things that I thought. We need honesty, somebody who can tell the truth. We need integrity. And, when I think of the word integrity, Rob, I think of integral, like it's a key piece, but it's consistent. No matter how you slice it.
Well, there's another word for it: consistency.
Consistency. Absolutely.
I know a lot about that stuff from the Navy.
It's what I love about McDonald's is the integrity of their fries. I can get them on Genesee Street. I can get them in Washington D.C. and you got the same golden fries. Now, if they hot, if they ain't hot, you can throw them out the window because they ain't no good. But yeah, you understand. But it's integrity. It's going to be consistent at all times. Transparency. Can I see through my leader and really see into him and see his heart? Donna Shaw, thank you. Make the hard decisions because it's right and not popular. That's what it. Okay, and I see someone out there, Carly Hammond. That deal. Okay, now let's have this conversation, Village, because this is our. Let's. Since you went there, Miss Petty, I gotta begin. I want to have this conversation. Okay, when I look at the individuals that are here, many people. As it relates in this thing, because we're talking about leadership, and Carly Hammond, to be honest, I'm going to be very clear with you and transparent, and I got the receipts to prove it. She reached out to me probably January or February. She was running for 95th district. She says, "Hey, Kareem, I've heard about what you're doing in the community, and I really believe that you are a voice that has the ability to make change in our community." And I'm being very transparent. And we set up a couple different times to have a coffee, sit down and have coffee. And in that period of time, the things that she was talking about, I embrace them. I think that it's wonderful. I think that if change is ever going to come in the Black community, it means that more than Black people, we only make 12% of the population and are not making any of the policies or the laws that govern us. So just as the civil rights, it was necessary for us to come together and whites to be involved, because it's about being equal. It's about being one nation. And so that means that everyone should desire to see equity and inclusion. We understand what diversity is. So I don't like to spend too much time talking about diversity, but we understand that equity and inclusion are very key and important and necessary in every element of society. But it requires, when I talk about equity and inclusion, it requires us to answer this question. What are you willing to give up to bring equity and inclusion to the situation? And that's when things become problematic. Now, Ms. Hammond, and I have nothing against Carly, but she came out and she protested, and people like, she's out there standing and she's saying this to the police officers. We have to understand Carly has a white privilege that affords her the opportunity to do some things that our other Black representatives or leaders or things cannot effectuate the same way. Carly Hammond, and I thank you, Carly, and you are a part of the struggle, and I'm so glad that you said you aren't going anywhere, and I look forward to us having an opportunity to sit down and have coffee as we had planned. But the fact of the matter is, Carly, after you cause and you shout and you protest and you do all of these things, in Saginaw City, you have the right to go back to Frankenmuth and be ingratiated with your privilege that you have, and that there's no issue, because you have the right in the eyes of those who have authority to speak truth to power. It becomes problematic as Black people, and we're often labeled in our community as being the ones who are rebel rousers. And so we don't want to give you the same right that you lawfully have that we would to other individuals who do the same thing. So I appreciate Carly, but unfortunately, Frankenmuth and does not have an understanding of what is necessary in the city of Saginaw. And Carly, I welcome that conversation. We can do coffee. Send me another message. We'll sit down and talk. Clint Bryant, I think he is a great orator. I think he's a nice young man. And the reality is, I don't have anything against Clint. I wish you the best, and I pray that you stay engaged. But the reality of the situation is that we need to have individuals who have been working in our community. We need to have individuals who can sit at the table and mimic the individuals that they're representing, who understand it is important. We can't, somebody say, let's turn over the table. We have to be able at some point after the protest to have a civil conversation about what needs to be changed and to be effective in our communication in such a way that we can bring that change to pass. You may not like it, throw arrows at me. I don't care. I can give it to you straight. Those of you, Petty Lewis, diversity equals white people feeling good about themselves. Petty, you are hilarious. I give you the crown on today. But today, I just want you guys to I want to thank you guys for tuning into this conversation. This, if you did not get a chance, go back and listen to it again. We are coming to a close. An hour goes so fast, but I want you guys to stay connected. I'm going to continue to sound the alarm. I'm going to continually make noise, and I'm going to continually to bring those individuals who don't have a voice. We're going to empower them by giving them the right to stay focused. All right, Jenna, real quick, Petty Lewis. Yeah, she never come to the hood. Real leaders stay in the hood, like real leaders like you, boy, and move out, keep your money here. Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you like this. I am an individual who believes that one of the greatest things that we can have is by making our dollars turn over in our community. I love you all. Take care. Grace and peace. Until next time, stay safe.
To Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen on KISS 97.1.
Good.
The views and opinions
We're going to
on Straight Talk with
continue
Kareem
this
Bowen
conversation on next week.
its guests.
Petty Lewis, you are hilarious.
Represent the opinion
Thank
of
you
the
guys.
station,
God bless you. Grace and
staff,
peace.
its owners, Alpha Media USA, or its advertisers.